Jurassic World Dominion, the third installment of the Jurassic World trilogy, the film which united the legacy cast along with the modern cast to conclude the Jurassic Park/World film series. Now, there is only one question. Was it good?
No.
Yeah, not really. But there were a few things that I liked about this movie, but the majority of it felt like a big fat mess. So let's start with the prologue, which I indeed kind of liked. Until the final T-Rex vs. Giga scene, but let's not talk about that. I like this because here they show the dinosaurs and all the other prehistoric animals just living their lives in the Cretaceous. Well, at least in the Jurassic Park universe, because hardly any of these depictions are accurate, but nonetheless, it's nice to see these animals do animal-like things, such as the Oviraptor stealing and eating an egg, Quetzalcoatlus scaring away Pteranodon so it can have a carcass all to itself,
Somebody touch my spaghetti!
a herd of Nasutoceratops migrating and relaxing in a river, all that stuff. This was honestly very nice, and I kind of wish that it would have been a bit longer, but it is what it is. Anyway, we end the prologue with Rexy causing havoc in a drive-in theater while being chased by the DFW. Now, let's talk about the actual story, which, as I already mentioned, felt like a big fat mess. Mostly because of the pacing, because it felt a bit too rushed, and also because they tried to cram way too much in this film than they should have. Thus, there wasn't really a steady focus on anything, to be fair. For example, the whole dinosaurs living alongside humans concept got pretty much completely ignored. The black market segment as well didn't get the time it felt like it should have, and although Biosyn did indeed get some focus throughout the film, that also felt a bit too rushed. Along with that, there were many totally unnecessary segments that don't have the slightest impact on the plot. However, there were still a few good segments. For instance, the Malta chase scene was pretty intense, although the Atrociraptor might just be the most uncreative design in the history of this franchise.
Boo! You stink!
I will admit the whole chase segment did have me on the edge of my seat. The only thing that bothered me was that in this scene, Tiger, one of the Atrociraptors, is literally just a few inches behind of Claire, and it still fails to catch up. Like, these things were bred to be fast, and yet they are incapable of outrunning a human.
Congratulations, you're a failure.
But nonetheless, I did indeed like this segment, especially this scene, because it's funny. And I like funny. We also have the ending where we see the dinosaurs living peacefully in the modern world. Personally, I thought this was very beautiful, and I kinda hoped that we would have gotten a bit more of this in the film, but sadly we didn't. Next, we also have the Therizinosaurus segment, which is my most favorite segment of the entire film. In this scene, the viewer doesn't immediately understand what's happening. The audience, for once, have to understand what they're watching by themselves. Unlike most of the other segments where things just happen and you just go along without really getting time to comprehend what's going on, or in some cases, face-palming yourself because of just how stupid that segment was. But for the Therizinosaurus segment, they're using the art of show don't tell by letting the audience understand what's happening through visuals rather than a narrative, which I think they did pretty well. But that's pretty much all the good segments. Most of the other stuff is either utterly stupid or has no connection to the plot at all. For example, the Allosaurus and Carnotaurus duo, which did nothing for the plot like at all. All they did was stayed in the background and ate a few people, including one of the competition winners. You know, the competition Jurassic World held. If you win it, you'll get a chance to be eaten by a dinosaur in Dominion. Yes, that one. Then we have the part where Maisie finds out that Charlotte is actually her mother. Though interesting, it doesn't really have that much bearing on the plot, other than giving the reason to why Biosyn kidnapped Maisie. Then we also have this scene where Ellie and Grant visit the DFW, and not only does this scene, but the DFW themselves play little to no role to the plot. They are just there for the sake of being there. Also, there are a few unnecessary / stupid things that a few of the characters do. For example, Owen mistaking the Giga for an Allosaurus, even though he literally just saw one back in Malta. Also, when Owen and Kayla are being chased by the Pyroraptor, all of a sudden Kayla does a totally unnecessary scream. Like, you can tell that this was put just for comedic effect, but it didn't work at the slightest. And finally, my most favorite of the bunch, when Claire is confronted by the Dilophosaurus, instead of running away or finding a nearby place to hide, she does something you won't believe. Like, out of literally everything else she could have done, she decides to sit down in front of the Dilophosaurus.
I demand to know who wrote this script!
Anyway, let's talk about the characters now. Character-wise, I really like Ramsey. I don't exactly know why, but he has something in him which I really like. Ian Malcolm, although still a bit funny, doesn't really have the same amount of charisma and humor that he had back in Jurassic Park.
Remind me to thank John for a lovely weekend.
Also, I like that Alan is sort of disconnected from the modern world, like he doesn't quite understand the technology or the other modernized stuff around him, yet he tries to understand as much as he can. I thought that was pretty charming. However, they didn't really do anything special with his character, which is kinda sad. Well, I mean, we all know the only reason Ellen and Ellie were brought back was to please all the fans who wanted to see them finally get together, but still. And finally, we have Dodgson.
Dodgson! Dodgson! We've got Dodgson here! See, nobody cares.
Although I do think his death was kinda scary. As a villain, he kinda falls flat. I think mainly because we don't really understand what his true intentions are, and also because his mentality isn't really that clear. Like, he lets the Pterosaurs loose to kill Owen, Claire, and Kayla as soon as he finds out that they're heading to Biosyn. He also traps Maisie, Ellie, and Grant in a Dimetrodon-filled cavern so that they might die, but when Dodgson finds out that Ian was the one who helped Ellie and Grant, what does he do?
Dr. Malcolm, you are fired.
What?
Like, that's it. This is the same guy who released the Pterosaurs and stopped the pod right in the caverns so that the others would die, but for Ian, he just fires him. And if that wasn't confusing enough, Dodgson also lets Ian rant in front of everybody and also lets him call him,
You rapacious rat.
So even though he might not have been as terrible of a villain as Mills was, I do think he could have been a lot better. Anyway, let's move on. Don't really have that much to say about all the other characters. They're all fine. Not anything to write home about, just fine. Anyway, now let's talk about the dinosaurs, who have hardly anything to do with the plot. Boo! It's pretty easy to say that Dominion probably has the biggest species roster in the entire Jurassic franchise, yet pretty much all of them are just there to be in the background. Now, I'm not saying that every species that appears has to have an important part to play for the plot, but this is the Jurassic franchise, and the main focus of this franchise are the dinosaurs. So at least a handful of species should have had some bearing on the plot. But no, hardly any of them do. Not even the main ones like Rexy, Blue, Beta, and the Giga have that much impact on the plot. Why? Because instead of the dinosaurs, the plot mainly revolves around, you won't believe me, genetically modified locusts. These locusts were the main reason Ellie wanted to investigate Biosyn. They were the reason why Biosyn needed Maisie's DNA and thus had to kidnap Maisie. So in the end, the only important species for the entire film is the locust.
You clearly don't know who you're talking to, so let me clue you in. I am the danger. I am the one who knocks.
Now, this wouldn't have been a problem if this wasn't a film of the Jurassic franchise and if the creators didn't market this film as being a film where they focus mainly on a world where dinosaurs live alongside humans. Anyway, putting that aside, the times when the dinosaurs do indeed do something for the plot, it's just the species appears, tries to kill the cast, fails to do so, doesn't elaborate further, leaves. There was no reason to have 12 brand new species if most of them aren't really going to have any special characteristics that make them more interesting. The only two that did have some noticeable characteristics were the Pyroraptor and the Therizinosaurus, and even between those two, the Therizinosaurus segment was the one that was actually enjoyable. Why? Because even if the Pyroraptor has the ability to swim, the scene still ends with Owen and Kayla running away and ending up completely unharmed. Also, why the hell is the Pyroraptor even here? This seems to be some sort of construction area and there is also no food around. So why is this thing even out here instead of the valley? Anyway, let's move on to our main dinosaur antagonist, the Giganotosaurus, which does nothing wrong in the entire film. Now, credit where credit's due. This film does depict the dinosaurs more like actual animals than the other Jurassic World movies. Even the Giganotosaurus for the most part behaves like an actual animal. But the problem is that the film is trying to frame the Giga as a villain.
You what?
Colin Trevorrow even went as far as to state that the Giga is comparable to the Joker, which is absolutely absurd. The Giga throughout the entire film hardly does anything villainous. It doesn't even kill other animals for sport, unlike the Indominus Rex. It was shown to be living peacefully alongside the Morus Intrepidus, and in the prologue, where an Iguanodon was roaming in the Giga's territory, the Giga noticed the Iguanodon, and instead of murdering it, the Giga just scares it away.
What are you doing in my swamp?
And the only reason the Giga killed the T-Rex was to protect itself and its territory. So how does that make the Giga a villain, let alone an equivalent of the Joker? Anyway, let's move on to two of my least favorite segments of the entire film. The cast's first encounter with the Giga and the final battle. Now here we can see that the Giga is looking directly at the cast, but as soon as they hide behind the car, the Giga acts as if it saw nothing. And even though it just saw them hide behind the car, it's moving so slowly as if it can't even see them. Like, it can literally see them from where it's standing, but the film is trying to make us believe that it can't. And now it's again standing in front of them and it still can't see them. But as soon as they start running, then it can. And after the cast managed to get inside the observation tower, the Giga attacks by breaking through the glass, and Owen for some reason decides to stab the Giga in the face. And the Giga is pretty much non-reactive. Finally, Claire electrocutes the Giga in the eye and the carnivore finally decides to give up. Like, this segment was so stupid, it made me question, what the frick did I just watch? Then, a few moments later, when our cast are trying to get out of Biosyn, the Giga returns along with the T-Rex so that we can see these two carnivores fight for territory. Now, firstly, where on earth did that North go? Like, it was here just a second ago. Also, that reminds me, how are so many species suddenly appearing and disappearing from this place? Like, we saw this place earlier in the film, and we saw that it's not that big that these dinosaurs can just magically appear and disappear. And yet, they are doing exactly that. Anyway, this T-Rex vs Giga battle is by far the worst battle in the history of the franchise. My main problem is that the movie hardly gives any focus to the fight. It's focusing more on the cast trying to escape than the fight itself, even though we all pretty much know that none of the cast members are going to die, so this entire battle sequence is pretty much wasted. Anyway, when the Giga pretty much kills Rexy, it gets distracted by Ellen, Ellie and Ian, and eventually the Therizinosaurus.
Hello, Ed boy.
Now, as I said before, how are these animals appearing out of nowhere? Literally a few seconds ago, there was no Therizinosaurus there, and then it suddenly appears grazing on the foliage while being completely unaware that two megatheropods are fighting right beside it. Like, you expect me to believe that? And now we get to the part that genuinely made me want to stop watching this film. When the light from the chopper falls on Rexy's eye, she gets a flashback of what happened to, not her, but the T-Rex from who she got her DNA from, and so she is now determined to take revenge.
Tyrannosaurus.
Had never seen such bullshit before.
So eventually Rexy kills the Giga by pushing it onto the Theris class, and for some reason, as the Giga dies, epic victorious music plays in the background, as if the Giga's death is some sort of victory, even though the Giga did absolutely nothing wrong. It was just being an animal. So there is no reason for this to be celebratory.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
So, all things considered, I'm going to give this movie a 5.5 out of 10. Sure, it was pretty bad, but on some occasions it was kinda enjoyable. And it's nowhere near as bad of a movie as Fallen Kingdom was. So if you do end it like this movie, that's completely fine. If you hate it, that's also fine. I personally think it would have been better if the creators focused more on the dinosaurs living in the modern world concept along with the black market concept. I think that would have made the film a bit more interesting, but that's just my opinion. So that's enough for this video. What's your opinion on Dominion? Did you like it? Did you not? What was your favorite scene? Let me know in the comment section down below, and if you're interested, why not consider joining the Discord server from the link in the description. And if you're new to the channel, why not consider subscribing. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.